Start with high-energy, grainy 35mm footage of the black Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit tearing across a bridge. The sound design is deafening, roaring V8 engine, police sirens, tires screeching, overlay clips of Burt Reynolds laughing that iconic, high-pitched, carefree laugh. For a brief, blinding stretch of history, there was one name that sat above every marquee in. Fast montage of box office hits, Deliverance, The Longest Yard, Hooper. Graphics fly on screen. No. One box office star. 1978, 1000. 979, 1,980, 1,981, 1,982. From 1,978 to 1,982, no actor on earth sold more tickets than Burt Reynolds. Not Harrison Ford, not Clint Eastwood, not Robert Redford. 5 years in a row, he was the crown. He owned the fast cars, the private jets, and the very heart of the American public. To see him was to see the alpha male in its purest, most unstoppable form. Abrupt cut to black. Silence. Then, a slow fade in to a dimly lit, sterile auction house in Las Vegas 2014. The camera pans over a pair of old, scuffed cowboy boots sitting on a display table. We see an elderly, frail man in the back of the room, leaning on a cane. But move forward 40 years, and the roar of the engines has been replaced by the dry, hollow sound of an auctioneer's gavel. The king was being forced to sell his memories, piece by piece, just to keep the lights on. Close up on the auction catalog. Lot 402, Golden Globe Award. Then, a quick, jarring flash of a medical X-ray showing a shattered human jaw. Most people think his downfall was just about bad movies or expensive divorces. They are wrong. Today we reveal the smoking gun, a single, split-second accident on a movie set in 1984 involving a metal chair. It was a moment that didn't just break his jaw, it dismantled his life. It started a quiet, terrifying spiral of addiction and physical decay that turned the world's greatest sex symbol into a man who, for 2 years, couldn't even open his mouth to speak. The title card slams onto the screen over a dark cinematic background, the crown and the cost. How does a man worth hundreds of millions end up auctioning off his own boots to survive? This isn't just a story about a career ending. It is a story about the cruelty of time, the illusion of permanence, and the price the body pays for the legend. This is the heartbreaking reality of Burt Reynolds. Archival footage of late 70 seconds America, gas lines, factories closing, Jimmy Carter on TV. Then contrast this with clips of Burt Reynolds on talk shows, Johnny Carson. He is relaxed, smoking a cigarette, making the audience roar with laughter. To understand the fall, you have to understand the height. In the late 1,970 seconds, America was tired. Trust in institutions had cracked, the economy was failing, the mood was anxious, and into that anxiety walked Burt. What made him different wasn't just success, it was recognition. People didn't admire him from a distance like they did with the polished, untouchable stars of the Golden Age. They claimed him. As some critics described it, Burt Reynolds didn't belong to Hollywood. Hollywood belonged to him only because he allowed it. Clips from Smokey and the Bandit. Burt looks at the camera and breaks the fourth wall with a wink. The Bandit car jumping over a police cruiser. He spoke like a man who had worked for a living. His smile wasn't rehearsed. It arrived crooked, late, and confident. In films like Smokey and the Bandit, his characters didn't lecture. They winked. They didn't represent authority. They teased it. He told America to get in the car, ignore the rules, and laugh on the way. Split screen comparing Burt to his contemporaries. Others look serious, moody. Burt looks like he's having the time of his life. There was a moment when Hollywood itself seemed to bend around him. Scripts arrived rewritten for his voice. Directors waited for his schedule. Studios built release calendars around his presence. He wasn't paid like an actor. He was paid like an outcome. But power has a strange effect. When it arrives this fast and this loud, it feels permanent. The checks keep coming. The crowds keep cheering. And slowly, almost invisibly, a dangerous thought forms in the mind of the king. This will never end. Slow reveal of the infamous 1972 Cosmopolitan centerfold. Pan across the image. The bearskin rug, the cigarette, the knowing grin. Do not show anything explicit. Focus on the facial expression and the playful nature of the shot. Then came the moment that sealed his myth and perhaps sealed his fate. In 1972, a single photograph ran through the world like an electric current. The Cosmopolitan centerfold. It wasn't staged as dominance, it was staged as humor, a grin instead of a glare. According to cultural historians, it broke an unspoken rule that male desire had to be hidden or armored. Burt made it casual, human, almost friendly. Montage of magazine covers, women holding the magazine, headlines screaming, "Burt." It turned him into the world's first true modern male sex symbol. Men didn't see competition. They saw permission to be confident without cruelty. Women didn't see distance. They saw approachability. But history shows that crowns are heaviest when they fit too well. Zoom in on Burt's eyes in an interview from the early 80 seconds. He looks tired of talking about his looks. That image became a cage. Hollywood stopped looking for his talent and started looking only for the mustache and the smile. He was trapped in the persona of the rugged Adonis. He felt he had to maintain that perfection forever. He couldn't be weak. He couldn't be hurting. And when you build an entire empire on physical invincibility, what happens when the body begins to break? Show the sheer scale of his wealth. Drone shots, or high-quality photos, of the Florida ranch Valhalla. The private jet with his logo. The helicopter landing in his backyard. Him standing on the field with his USFL team, the Tampa Bay Bandits. By the early 80 seconds, Burt Reynolds didn't just have money, he had a kingdom. He owned a massive ranch in Florida that operated like a small town. He owned a private jet, he owned a helicopter. He even bought a professional sports team. According to accounts from insiders, his salary reflected his power. He treated wealth like a river that would never dry. Footage of Burt and Lonnie Anderson. The golden couple. Flashing cameras, diamonds, white limousines. There was pride in ownership. He didn't just want a star in the American dream, he wanted to possess it. Spending wasn't reckless in his mind, it was structural. It was proof that he had made it. But numbers only describe the present. They never warn about the future. A calendar flipping rapidly from 1982 to 1983. Visuals of checks being signed, expenses piling up. The overhead for his lifestyle was millions of dollars a month. The planes, the staff, the horses, the mansions, they required a constant, uninterrupted stream of blockbuster hits. He had positioned himself so that he could not afford to stop moving. Kings don't plan for abdication. They plan for tomorrow to look exactly like today. And that was the moment fate chose to begin its work. Not with a scandal, not with a box office bomb, but with a chair. Total atmospheric shift. The warm, golden colors of the previous sections disappear. The screen turns cool, blue, and metallic. We see a clapperboard. City Heat, 1984. 1984. The movie was City Heat. It was supposed to be the cinematic event of the decade. Burt Reynolds and Clint Eastwood, the two biggest stars in the world, sharing the screen. Recreation or shadowed clip. A fight scene, chaos, a stunt gone wrong. Sound design, a loud, sickening metal crack. During a fight scene, a stuntman was supposed to strike Burt with a breakaway chair, a fragile prop made of balsa wood designed to shatter harmlessly. But in the chaos of the take, a mistake was made. A real iron frame chair was used instead. It slammed into Burt's face with the force of a sledgehammer. Medical animations of a jaw fracture. X-rays showing the temporomandibular joint, TMJ, shattered. The image is painful to look at. It didn't just break a bone, it shattered his temporomandibular joint. The pain was immediate, blinding, and permanent. He developed a condition that made eating solid food agony and speaking a torture. Photos of Burt from late 1984 over 1985. He looks drastically different. Gaunt, hollow cheeks, eyes sunken. The contrast with the alpha male of part 1 is terrifying. In the aftermath, the man who defined strength began to wither. He lost 40 pounds in a matter of months. The robust, muscular king vanished, replaced by a ghost. And here is where the tragedy deepened. Because it was the mid-1980 seconds, and a new, terrifying word was gripping Hollywood: AIDS. Newspaper headlines from the 80 seconds about the AIDS panic. Tabloid covers speculating on Burt's health. Seeing his rapid weight loss, the industry didn't ask if he was hurt. They assumed he was dying. Rumors spread that Burt Reynolds had the virus. In the fear-driven climate of 1985, that whisper was a career death sentence. But Burt wasn't fighting a virus. He was fighting a secret war against pain and a new, chemical master that was about to take control of his mind. A slow-motion macro shot of a single white pill spinning on a black surface. The background sound is a low, humming drone, like a headache that won't go away. To silence the agony in his jaw, doctors prescribed a sleeping pill called Halcyon. At the time, it was seen as a miracle. But for Burt, it became a prison. He later admitted that at his lowest point, he wasn't taking 1 or 2. He was taking up to 50 pills a day. Blurry, distorted point-of-view shots of a movie set. The lights are too bright, voices are muffled. This simulates the fog he was living in. Imagine the mind of a king, dissolving into a chemical fog. The charisma that once commanded armies of fans was replaced by mood swings and unreliability. On set, the man who used to be the first one to arrive was now the one everyone walked on eggshells around. A montage of rejection letters or phone calls going unanswered. A producer hanging up a phone. And Hollywood. Hollywood is a machine that runs on momentum. When a star stops generating heat, the industry doesn't hold a funeral. It simply changes the locks. The scripts stopped coming. The meetings ended. As we analyzed earlier, Burt Reynolds hadn't just lost his health. He had lost his leverage. He went from being the asset that guaranteed a hit to the liability that ensured a risk. And in the boardroom, liabilities are liquidated. Fast-paced, chaotic montage of 90 seconds tabloid covers. Burt and Loney. War. Divorce. Bankrupt. The music becomes discordant and stressful. In the middle of this physical and professional collapse, Burt tried to buy his way back to happiness. He married Loney Anderson. It was billed as the wedding of the century, a union of 2 sex symbols. But you cannot build a marriage on a foundation of debt and addiction. When it ended in 1993, it wasn't just a breakup. It was a financial nuclear bomb. A slow zoom on a legal document. Chapter 11, Bankruptcy Protection. Then images of the for sale signs on his beloved ranch. The divorce cost millions, but the real problem was the lifestyle we saw earlier. The ranch, the helicopter, the staff. They were built for an income that no longer existed. In 1996, the unthinkable happened. The king of the box office filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. He was over $11 million in debt. Footage of an older Burt, looking humbled, answering questions from reporters. He tries to smile, but the sparkle is gone. It is a cruel irony. The man who spent decades playing the hero who always wins was now standing in a courtroom, explaining to a judge why he couldn't pay his bills. The alpha male mask had cracked, revealing a man who had simply run out of road. Return to the auction house scene from the intro. This time the pacing is very slow. Acoustic, melancholic music plays piano or cello. We see the items clearly now. The Trans Am replica, the Rolodex, the costumes, and this leads us back to the room with the gavel, December 2014. Burt Reynolds, now frail and walking with a cane, put his life up for sale. More than 600 personal items. Close up on the Golden Globe Award for Boogie Nights being lifted by a gloved hand. The auctioneer points to a bidder. He sold his Smokey and the Bandit jacket. He sold the canoe from Deliverance. He even sold the Golden Globe he won for his comeback in Boogie Nights. To the public, he claimed he was just downsizing. But looking at the images, it felt like something far heavier. A shot of the empty shelves in his home, where these awards used to sit. These weren't just props pulled from storage. They were pieces of a life lived at full volume. They were the proof that he had once ruled the world. When a king sells his crown, it is the final admission that the reign is over. It exposes a truth rarely seen so clearly, that success, when stripped of momentum, leaves behind objects. And objects can be sold. He didn't just part with trophies. He parted with his history, item by item, to strangers who bought a piece of his soul for a few $1,000s. Clip from the movie Boogie Nights 1997. Burt looks older, sadder, but incredibly powerful on screen. Then cut to a headline. Burt Reynolds cast in Tarantino movie. There was almost a fairy tale ending. In his final years, a new generation of directors began to see Burt not for the swagger he had lost, but for the scars he had gained. Quentin Tarantino cast him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was the role Burt had been waiting for a chance to play, an old, blind ranch owner. A role that required gravitas, not stunts. A photo of Burt in 2018, looking very weak but smiling, holding a script. Then, a slow fade to black. It was set to be his final bow. His Clint Eastwood moment. But bodies do not follow Hollywood scripts. On the 6th of September 2018, just weeks before he was scheduled to film his scenes, Burt Reynolds passed away. The comeback ended before the cameras could even roll. The black Trans Am drives away from the camera into a thick white fog. The taillights fade out. Reason greater. Thanks for watching in my Compton. He left the world the same way he lived in it. With a headline, a mustache, and a heart that had been broken by the very fame he spent his life chasing. A montage of Burt laughing from his 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, all the way to his 80 seconds. The laughter echoes and blends together. The music swells to a cinematic, emotional crescendo. So, what is the legacy of the man who had it all and watched it slip through his fingers? Burt Reynolds' life is not just a warning about excess. It is a lesson about impermanence. He showed us that crowns are temporary, that relevance is rented, and that time does not negotiate with anyone, not even the bandit. The screen shows a final beautiful shot of Burt looking at the sunset. Text appears, Burt Reynolds, 1936 to 2018. He auctioned off his Golden Globes and his cowboy boots, not just because he needed the money, but perhaps because he finally understood that he didn't need the objects to be the legend. The objects are gone, but the laugh remains. And sometimes, that has to be enough. The music abruptly changes. A low, ominous synth drone begins. The screen glitch cuts to a grainy VHS image of a helicopter flying against a dark sky. Burt Reynolds fought his battle in the public eye. He showed us his scars. But in the same decade that Burt was ruling the box office, another alpha male was rising. A man who was paid $250,000 a week to own the sky. A photo of Jan Michael Vincent, Airwolf era, looking handsome and stoic, slowly cross-fading into a shocking image of him in his later years, an amputee, unrecognizable. But unlike Burt, his smoking gun wasn't a chair. It was a silent, internal collapse that turned him into a ghost while he was still at the top. The world didn't even notice he was gone until it was too late. You think you know the price of fame? You haven't heard the story of the $250,000 silence. A end screen appears with a video thumbnail. The tragedy of Airwolf. Click here to uncover the next chapter. The truth is lonelier than you can imagine.